My fiancé looked me in the eye and told me he wanted an open relationship 2 weeks before our wedding. The worst part was that he said it like he was asking to change the color of the napkins, not the entire foundation of our lives. He sat there at our kitchen table with our vendor contracts spread out between us, our seating chart open on the laptop, and a stack of RSVP cards next to his elbow. He said, "I've been thinking. I don't know if monogamy is realistic for me long term." Like we were having a philosophical debate in a college seminar, not finalizing vows that literally said forsaking all others. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came because it wasn't a joke. He was serious. The ring on my finger suddenly felt like someone else's mistake. To understand how I got there, to the moment where I canceled an entire wedding because the man I thought I knew wanted a hall pass on our marriage before it even started, you have to understand what came before. When I met Liam, I was 29 and tired in the kind of way you don't sleep off. I had just come out of a long relationship that died slowly from indifference. My friends were getting married, having babies, posting "we said yes" photos while I was posting pictures of my cat and pretending I loved, focusing on myself. I had a stable job in HR, a decent apartment, a life that looked fine on paper and felt small in my chest. Then my friend dragged me to a game night I didn't want to attend, and there he was. Liam. Tall, easy smile, stupidly good at charades. He was the kind of guy who made everyone feel like they were the most interesting person in the room. He asked questions, remembered answers, made jokes that were just on the right side of self-deprecating without being depressing. He worked in marketing, of course he did. He made a living selling ideas, and that night he sold me on one, that maybe I wasn't as unlovable as my ex had made me feel. We started dating in that cliché, we just clicked way. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends together. Weekends turned into a drawer at his place, then a key, then whole shelves of my stuff blending into his. He was attentive and sweet, the guy who texted good morning and actually meant it, who met my parents and charmed them in one visit, who remembered my coworkers' names and brought snacks for my team, just because. If he had red flags back then, they were pale pink and waving in the background where I couldn't or wouldn't focus. There were little things that didn't sit right if I looked too close, like how he always needed to be liked by everyone, how he flirted harmlessly with waitresses and called it friendly, how he seemed to need validation in a way that never fully filled up. But he was honest about his past, or so I thought. "I've never cheated," he said once, lying with his head in my lap while we watched Netflix. "But I've definitely sabotaged relationships when I felt trapped. I don't ever want to feel trapped again." I remember stroking his hair and saying, "We'll make sure this doesn't feel like a trap," because of course I turned it into my job. We talked about monogamy early on. I actually brought it up because I'd seen enough poly/open relationship discourse online to know it wasn't some fringe thing. "I'm very boring in that sense," I joked. "I'm a one-person kind of person." He laughed and said, "Me too. I'm way too jealous for that open stuff. I want my person." That sentence lodged itself in my brain as a promise. So when he asked me to move in after a year, it felt like the natural next step, not a risk. When he proposed after 2.5 years, it felt like the payoff of every compromise I'd ever made in love. He did it on a weekend trip he planned, by a lake at sunset, so cliché it looped back around to perfect. He got down on one knee, said all the right things about spending forever with me, about building a life, about how I was his home. I cried, said yes, texted my friends, called my parents, posted the obligatory handpic with the caption, "I said yes," and watched the likes roll in. We picked a date and booked a venue. My Pinterest boards finally came to life. I chose a dress that made my mom cry in the boutique. His mom asked me for copies of our engagement photos to frame. We argued about DJ playlists and plus ones, normal wedding stuff, the kind of arguments you have when you take for granted that you're both heading in the same direction. There were stress cracks, obviously. Planning a wedding is like shaking a snow globe full of everyone's expectations and letting them fall all over your head. Liam wanted a big party. I wanted something smaller. He wanted an open bar that would blow our budget. I wanted to not take out a second mortgage for one night. He got snappy once and said, "You're acting like you don't even want this." I shot back, "I want the marriage more than the show." He apologized later, said he was just stressed, said he just wanted to celebrate us properly. I chalked it up to pressure. We were both working full-time, answering family texts about table arrangements on our lunch breaks, and trying to remember why we even started this in the first place. Then came the bachelor and bachelorette party planning. His best man, Justin, wanted to do a guy's trip in Vegas. Nothing crazy, he said, which is exactly what people say when they plan on going crazy. I wasn't thrilled. I have nothing against Vegas, but I've met Justin and I've met his friends and I've seen their group chat notifications pop up on Liam's phone. Still, I didn't want to be that fiancé, the controlling, no fun one. So I said, as long as there are no strip clubs and no cheating, half joking, half not. Liam laughed. "You know me," he said. "I'm not going to throw away our marriage for a night of bad decisions." Then he added, "Besides, if I ever wanted to be with someone else, I'd talk to you about it first." The sentence slid past me at the time, filed under communication is good. I should have paid more attention to the door he cracked open with that. 2 months before the wedding, we went to dinner with a couple Liam had met at a networking event, Jasmine and Cole, both very attractive, very confident, we just got back from Bali for the third time type people. Over appetizers, Jasmine mentioned their open relationship like she was talking about their favorite TV show. "It's honestly the best thing we've ever done for our marriage," she said, sipping her wine. No jealousy, just radical honesty and freedom. Cole nodded, adding, "Monogamy is kind of a social construct when you think about it." I smiled politely, feeling slightly out of my depth. Liam, on the other hand, leaned in, fascinated, and asked a million questions: how it worked, what rules they had, how they handled feelings, whether it ever got messy. They answered like they'd done this little TED Talk before. At one point, Jasmine looked at me and asked, "Would you ever consider something like that?" I said quickly, "No, it's not for me." She shrugged. "Fair enough, it's not for everyone." On the way home, Liam wouldn't stop talking about it. "It's so interesting," he said. "They're so secure, so evolved." I felt a knot forming in my stomach. "We've talked about this," I said carefully. "I'm not comfortable with that. I'm okay being vanilla." He laughed. "I didn't say we have to do it. I'm just fascinated, that's all." I tried to let it go, but the topic kept resurfacing in small ways. He'd send me a podcast episode about rethinking monogamy, a meme about how unrealistic it is to expect one person to meet all your needs. He'd make jokes about having a celebrity hall pass. All of it were tiny little pushes against a boundary I had thought we clearly drew together. Then came the night that blew it all up. We were at home, surrounded by wedding crap, our kitchen table buried under place cards and contracts. I had my laptop open, juggling emails from the florist and the caterer. My stress level was at a solid 9 out of 10. My phone buzzed with my mother asking about centerpieces and his mother asking if her cousin could bring 2 extra people. I rubbed my temples and said, "Remind me why people do this to themselves." Liam was quiet for a long moment, too quiet. Then he said, "Speaking of doing things to ourselves, I've been thinking about us. About the wedding. About the future." I froze, the way you do when you hear an unfamiliar noise in the middle of the night. "Okay," I said, keeping my eyes on the screen. "Thinking what?" He took a breath, like he was about to present a pitch deck. "I don't know if monogamy is realistic for me long-term," he said. "I've been doing a lot of reading, talking to people, and I think an open relationship model might be healthier for us. Less pressure, more honesty." I blinked, finally looking up. "You think what?" I asked, not sure I'd heard right. "I'm not saying I want to cheat," he rushed to clarify. "I'm saying, what if we built something more flexible, where, if either of us were attracted to someone else, we could explore that in a way that doesn't involve lying and sneaking around? Imagine going into marriage without that old-fashioned expectation that we'll only ever want each other forever. It could actually make us stronger." I laughed. I couldn't help it, a disbelieving, stunned laugh. "Are you serious?" I asked. "We're 2 weeks away from a wedding and you're asking to? What, date other people? He frowned like I was being unreasonable. You're oversimplifying it, he said. It's about honesty and freedom, not dating other people like I'm some selfish teenager. This is about acknowledging that sexual exclusivity is a choice, not a default, and I don't want us to sleepwalk into something that might not fit us. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man who cried when we tasted our wedding cake flavors with the man trying to sell me on honest infidelity. It fits me, I said slowly. I've told you that more than once. I want a monogamous marriage. I want to know that when I stand up there and say vows, we're actually going to live them. He rolled his eyes. Vows can evolve, he said. People change, needs change. I'm trying to get ahead of that instead of pretending it'll never happen. Isn't that what you're always preaching in your HR trainings, planning for change instead of reacting? The way he used my own work language against me made my skin crawl. This isn't a corporate restructuring, I snapped. This is our relationship. This is my life, my body, my heart. You don't drop something like this on me 2 weeks before a wedding and call it proactive. He bristled. If not now, when? He asked. After we're married and resentful? Do you want me to wake up in 5 years and realize I'm suffocating and cheating in secret? Isn't it better to talk about this now? Did you just admit you want to cheat on me? I asked, my voice suddenly quieter, because beneath all the dressed-up language, that was the core. He sighed. You're not listening, he said. I'm saying, theoretically, I can see myself wanting to explore with other people someday. That doesn't diminish what I feel for you. I love you. I want to marry you. I just don't want to pretend like we'll never be attracted to anyone else. That's not realistic. I swallowed hard. Have you already slept with someone else? I asked, my stomach flipping. Is that what this is? He shook his head quickly, a little too quickly. No, God, no, he said. I would tell you if that happened. My mind replayed late nights at the office, new female coworkers' names, that one weekend trip he took with the team, Jasmine and Cole, and their open marriage. I felt like I was suddenly seeing a crime scene photo after knowing the people smiling in it. So, what exactly are you asking? I said, gripping the edge of the chair. Spell it out. Don't abstract it. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. I'm asking, he said, if you'd be open to the idea that, after we're married, if an opportunity came up for me to, I don't know, hook up with someone, explore, with rules we both agree on, that you wouldn't see that as a betrayal, but as part of our agreement. And if you wanted the same, I'd be open to that too. This doesn't have to be one-sided. I'm not trying to be the bad guy here. I'm trying to be honest about my desires so they don't turn into secrets. I stared at him, incredulous. You're asking me to pre-approve cheating, I said. To sign off on you sleeping with other people as long as you put it in a Google Doc first. You're being flippant, he snapped. This is serious. This is about maturity. About understanding that humans aren't naturally monogamous. Then why did you propose to me? I shot back. Why did we plan a wedding with vows you clearly don't believe in? Why did you wait until deposits were non-refundable to tell me you want to screw other people? He flinched at that. Because I thought I could do it, he admitted quietly. I thought I could be that person, the one-person person. And the closer we get, the more I feel this panic in my chest like I'm about to sign up for something I can't keep. I don't want to lie to you. So instead you want me to help you rewrite the contract, I said. To fit your panic. He looked almost hurt. It's not just my panic, he said. What if you meet someone down the road? What if you feel trapped? I'm trying to build something flexible enough to survive real life. Reality check, I said, my voice shaking now. Real life is hard enough without adding scheduled third parties. I am not interested in watching my husband relate, honestly, to other women to prove how evolved we are. I want simple, not because I'm naive, but because I know what I can handle. I don't want to sit at home while you're out exploring and pretend it's healthy. He leaned back, exasperated. So that's it, he said. You're just going to dismiss an entire model of relationships because it makes you uncomfortable. Yes, I said. When that model involves me sacrificing my emotional safety for your curiosity, absolutely. The room felt smaller and smaller, the wedding checklist on the table suddenly looking like evidence of a crime. If you were truly monogamous, he said after a moment, this wouldn't scare you. You'd know nothing could shake you. Jealousy is insecurity. I almost laughed again. Jealousy is a natural response to watching your partner share intimacy with someone else, I said. Insecurity is what you're asking me to swallow, so you don't have to sit with your own fear of commitment. We stared at each other across the table, the distance between us suddenly so much wider than the wood and paper. So, what do you want to do? He asked finally. Call the whole thing off because we can't agree on theoretical boundaries that might not even come up? Theoretical, I repeated. You don't bring this up in this way, this close to the wedding unless there is something very real behind it. Maybe a person, maybe a fantasy, I don't know. And honestly, at this point, it doesn't matter. I took off my engagement ring slowly, feeling my hands tremble as I set it on the table between us, the tiny circle of metal suddenly heavy with all the things unsaid. If you don't know if monogamy is realistic for you, I said, you have no business getting married. Not to me. Maybe not to anyone. His eyes widened. Whoa, calm down, he said, reaching out. We're just talking. We don't have to make any big decisions right now. You just told me you want an open relationship, I said. 2 weeks before our wedding. That is a big decision. You already made one. I'm just catching up. I stood up, my legs wobbly, my heart pounding. Where are you going? He asked, standing too. I'm going to my sister's, I said, grabbing my bag. And I'm calling the venue in the morning. To do what? He asked, panic finally flickering in his eyes. To cancel, I said. The word came out steadier than I felt. He looked like I'd slapped him. You're really going to throw all this away, he said, gesturing wildly at the table, at the invitations, at the life we'd been crafting, because I was honest about what I'm struggling with. You're not struggling with whether to have kids or move cities, I said. You're struggling with whether you want to be faithful. Those are not the same. I'm not going to legally bind myself to someone who wants a contingency plan for sleeping with other people baked into our marriage. He tried every angle in the next 24 hours. He apologized for the timing, said he'd just gotten in his head after talking to Jasmine and Cole, said he still wanted to marry me, that we could table the conversation until after the wedding, as if this was some agenda item we could push to next quarter. My friends were split when I told them. Some said, maybe he's just scared. People say dumb stuff before weddings. Others said, absolutely not. That's a preview, not a fluke. My sister said nothing for a long time, then finally said, listen to the part of you that already knows your answer, the one that took off the ring. My parents, to their credit, didn't pressure me either way. They just hugged me and said, a marriage is more important than a party. My boss, who'd been married for 30 years, hugged me in the break room when I told her I'd need time off to deal with wedding stuff and whispered, better no husband than the wrong one. I called the venue, the photographer, the DJ, the florist, one by one. I listened to myself say, we need to cancel, over and over, each time feeling a little sicker and a little more sure. The financial hit was brutal. We lost deposits we couldn't get back. My stomach turned when I looked at the total, like I'd thrown money into a fire. But every time I pictured standing up there in front of everyone, knowing my fiancé wanted to renegotiate monogamy before we even signed the license, I knew I couldn't do it. When I told Liam it was officially canceled, he stared at me like he didn't recognize me. I thought you'd cool down, he said. I thought you'd see I was trying to be honest. I see that, I said. And I'm glad you didn't wait until after the wedding. Honestly, in a messed up way, this is a gift because now I know before I changed my name. You're being so rigid, he said. So black and white. Some things are black and white, I replied. I want a partner who doesn't see fidelity as a negotiable upcharge. That's not rigid, that's just my line. He tried one last card. You'll never find someone who ticks every box, he said. Someone who loves you, wants the same life, and never questions monogamy. That's a fantasy. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather be alone than constantly wondering who you're texting and whether I agreed to this or just got worn down. We parted ways, messy and hurt and angry. We had to untangle leases and shared furniture and friend groups. Some mutuals picked sides, some stayed neutral, some ghosted to avoid the drama. I went back to my old apartment complex, moved into a unit with yellowing walls and carpet I hated, and painted one accent wall a ridiculous, bright color just because I could. The night that would have been our wedding, I turned off my phone and went to my sister's instead. We made pasta in sweatpants and watched dumb movies. At one point I cried because a character walked down an aisle. My sister handed me a tissue and said, "This would have been worse if he did this after you signed papers." I nodded, big ugly tears running down my face. "It still sucks," I said. "It sucks to have been so wrong about someone." She shook her head. "You weren't wrong," she said. "You loved who he showed you, then he showed you more, and you decided that version wasn't for you. That's not failure, that's clarity." I went to therapy because untangling my worth from someone else's desire is above my mental pay grade. My therapist said something that stuck. He wanted to renegotiate the terms of the marriage before it started. You decided not to sign. That's not you being inflexible. That's you reading a contract and declining. Meanwhile, life went on for Liam. He didn't crawl into a cave. He kept working, kept posting. 6 months after the canceled wedding, I saw a photo of him on social media at a rooftop bar with Jasmine and Cole and a group of people. The caption read, "Surround yourself with people who challenge norms and choose honesty." I rolled my eyes so hard I saw my brain. I wasn't jealous, but I was annoyed that he was still framing himself as the brave explorer of modern love, while I was the closed-minded ex who couldn't handle honesty. A year later, a mutual friend told me he'd started seeing someone new. "They're very open," she said, putting a strange emphasis on the word. Like, actually doing that open relationship thing. They date other people sometimes. They post about it a lot. It seems intense. I looked up the new girlfriend out of morbid curiosity. Her feed was full of long captions about deconstructing monogamy and loving without ownership. A part of me wondered if she really felt free, or if she just feared losing him too much to say no. But I reminded myself that she was not my responsibility, just as I hadn't been Jasmine's. Some lessons you can only learn by living them. On my side of the story, quietly, without a big announcement, my life got better. Not in a Hollywood rom-com way where I immediately met the one after leaving the wrong, but in a slow reclamation. I slept more. I laughed more. I didn't have to lie awake wondering why my partner suddenly followed 5 new yoga instructors or why he'd been distant since that networking event. I threw myself into friendships I had neglected. I took a solo trip to the coast, sat on a beach with a paperback, and realized no one's opinion of my relationship status mattered as much as the feeling of sand between my toes and a heart that wasn't constantly bracing for impact. A year and a half after the almost wedding, I met someone at a friend's low-key barbecue. Not a manic pixie dream man, just a guy named Marcus who brought his own homemade salsa and spent half the evening playing with the host's toddler so the mom could eat while her food was hot. When we eventually started dating, I noticed something simple but radical. I never had to convince him that monogamy mattered. He didn't treat fidelity as a cage. He treated it as a choice he was comfortable making. One night, when we'd been seeing each other for a while, I told him the whole story, start to finish, about Liam and the open relationship proposal, about the canceled wedding, about the money lost, and the humiliation and the weird relief. I waited for him to make a joke or a comment about how maybe Liam had a point. Instead, he just said, "That must have hurt." "I'm really glad you chose yourself." I laughed weakly. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted, I admitted. If I should have tried harder to compromise. He shook his head. "There's no compromise between wanting exclusivity and wanting openness," he said. "There's just one person agreeing to something that doesn't fit them. You didn't overreact. You just believed him when he told you who he was." That line sat warm in my chest for days. Every so often, I still think about that night at the kitchen table, about the version of me that could have said, "Okay, we'll try it, for you," a version who might have thought being chosen sometimes was better than risking not being chosen at all. I imagine that life, with the anxiety and the checking my phone and the potential while he explores, and I want to hug that imaginary version of myself and tell her she deserves more than being a secure base for someone else's experiments. In the end, I canceled a wedding and people talked for a while. Some called me brave. Some thought I was insane. Some quietly wondered if there was someone else, or if I was afraid of commitment, the only two options people seemed to believe in. But none of those people were there at that table, looking across at a man who wanted me to co-sign my own heartbreak in advance in the name of being modern. If there's anything I took from all of it, it's this: there is nothing wrong with wanting monogamy in a culture that loves to call that naive. There is nothing wrong with wanting something different either. But there is something deeply wrong with trying to drag someone along on a model they never consented to, calling it honesty, when what you're really asking for is permission to hurt them. Liam wanted an open relationship even though we were about to get married. I canceled the wedding because of it. That sounds dramatic when you reduce it to a headline. But in reality, it was the simplest decision I've ever made. He wanted doors open that I needed to be closed. And I finally realized I was allowed to walk out of a room that no longer felt safe instead of waiting for him to bring someone else in and call it love.